If you haven't watched Devlog 7A, do it now. You'll be a lot less confused, but still confused, if you watched that. This is my game button multipliers, and I've added a few features that will be important for adding items, merchant GUIs, item GUIs, and a lot more. However, none of them actually work. So we're doing that now. Okay, let's just get into it. First of all, I made the buttons actually give you gems because what's the point of items if you can't buy them? I also added a few item types, but that'll only matter once we make the merchant GUIs work, and added items to the data store. I also made the reset button reset hyper multi and not look horrible. Not sure why I didn't do that earlier. I also made the items have random costs, but generally adding more items. There were also item decals made by someone else, but I'm keeping that anonymous. The making of the item decals wasn't recorded as it wasn't made by me, so no footage. Since we've got items, let's make it possible to actually buy items. I started by making a script that runs when you buy an item and adding stuff to it. Then I made another script which did basically the same thing as the last script. I also noticed that items wouldn't save correctly, so I changed the data stores. On the topic of creating the scripts, I made yet another script, this time updating the shop GUI. Unfortunately, it showed that the cost was -1 gems. I had to do a decent bit of research, but the main reason was module scripts being pain. To get around that, I had to add a remote event, fix a copious amount of errors, and much more. But by the end, it worked. But I wanted to add a feature where if there was a small chance the item would restock when you bought an item. If it didn't restock, the price would slightly increase. So I had to add a lot of stuff. It did work at the end though, so let's just move on to the next part. So now that you can get items, we need a way to show that you have items. Fortunately, we have an items GUI, but it doesn't work. So we're doing that. I added a script that updated the item GUI and it worked well enough. I also decided to make a script that updates the items, and I did have to fix a few errors, but it turned out fine. I also realized I should have the item manager on the server, so I made that. But I was mostly setting up things to help when items get activated. Speaking of items getting activated, I made items be able to activate. But the item GUI looked interesting when you clicked on an item multiple times, so I had to fix that. I also fixed the item manager not updating items. Also, I added stats for item boosts so items can actually work. They still don't work, so I made items affect the stats. I also made the GUI more intuitive by making it show duration and adding a text box at the bottom of the item showcase. Now that items can activate and the GUI works, it's time to make items actually work. Since the item boosts already worked well enough, all I had to do was make buttons take boosts into account and do the same for billboards. It's safe to say that was very tedious as I had to add the boost stats and more multiplication, and it was very repetitive. I did get it done though, so I released the update and the items are done. And that's the end of the video. You can click off now.